Hello and welcome. My name is Dr. Ben. I'm your host for the Pre-Chiro podcast, where we just have conversations with students and chiropractors who are on the path and just share insights and make your journey maybe a little bit easier, maybe bring a little bit more ease to just where you're at right now and trying to figure out what it means to be a chiropractor. So today I'm connecting with a chiropractic student. Alex Bilter, thank you so much for joining us. Introduce yourself, share a little bit about kind of where you were at in life and what your background was when you decided you want to become a chiropractor.
Awesome. So I'm a second quarter student at Life University. I want to say thank you for asking me to be on here. It's a pleasure and an honor. So chiropractic kind of totally changed my life, and it was a big surprise for me. I knew nothing really about chiropractic. I was a nursing student. And, I was just like societally fit into the medical paradigm, and then I was diagnosed with a reproductive disorder, and they were just like, oh, just stay on medication. But the more research I did, the more it didn't make sense to me. And I ended up going to a chiropractor for some back pain that I had. And I didn't think that she knew anything about, this, but for some reason I asked her, I was like, hey, do you know anything about reproductive disorders? And she's like, yeah. And I have had 3 knee surgeries, and, that kind of correlates to like the lumbar spine. And she goes, Alex, everything that you're telling me right now, like that's where your neurological interference is. And just like in that moment, it blew my mind. And I was like, whoa, like your spine has a lot to do with your health and like the way that your body functions. And since that moment, I just have been inspired to like optimize my own health and help other people optimize their own health. And chiropractic is what did that for me, right? Mm-hmm. And so my passion is to help other people realize that they're not a victim to whatever is going on in their body or what their doctor tells them that they have to live with for the rest of their life. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And once you decided you wanted to go this direction, where were you at in the nursing program? Were you about to finish it? Was this a bachelor's in nursing? And I'm curious, were you ever exposed to chiropractic as a potential pathway in education when you were deciding, do I want to go nursing? Do I want to go a different direction? Like, how did you decide on nursing, I guess is my question. And then once you got clear that you were going to become a chiropractor, like what was the amount of time that took place between that decision and you starting school?
So it was a bachelor's of science in nursing. And it's a 4-year program. I was in year 3. And I had never thought about chiropractic ever. Like no one had ever come up to me and was like, you should be a chiropractor. It was really this interaction that I had with my chiropractor, and they were the people that were like, you should be a chiropractor. And funny enough, when they said that, I actually laughed at them. And I was like, there's no way that I'm going to drop out of nursing school and become a chiropractor. But the more I experienced, the more I just knew that this is what I had to do. And it was a split second decision for me. Like I remember going to visit, because I became really close with them, and I went to visit some of their family. And on the plane ride back, I was just thinking about my life. Because, when you all have your plan, you're in school, you're like, this is what I'm going to do. This is my timeline. And I had that, and I was looking out of the window of the plane thinking about my timeline. And in like a split second decision, it was like, well, I'm going to drop out of nursing school and I'm going to become a chiropractor. And literally within a week, I applied to Life University. And then moved here within, I want to say like 4 months. So it was like a very rapid decision on my part.
Mm-hmm. And it sounds like you've landed, you're in second quarter now, so you're about 3 to 6 months in. Can you kind of just talk about your experience thus far?
Yeah, I mean, it's been great. It's really, really fast paced, it's kind of like a big change. But to be in such close proximity with people who are so like-minded is really, really amazing. And the opportunities that you get here are like crazy, like literally the first week of classes, I was sitting in philosophy class and I like went up to my professor and we ended up having like an hour-long conversation. It's really whatever you make of it, if you choose to be super invested in classes in school, that's super important as well. But all of the professors are here to help you. The staff, administration, the chiropractic community is super loving. And, what we want to do is spread chiropractic, and pretty much everybody will help you do that if you have a passion for it. So, I mean, it's been amazing. The growth that I have had personally, physically, mentally is I literally have never experienced anything like it. So I'm super grateful.
Know what you know now, what would you go back, and if you were talking to a student in nursing program, or if you were talking to a group of students, what would you kind of do to just introduce them maybe to the idea that they should consider chiropractic, just to like check it out? Because it sounds like you found out about it, experienced it. Well, you found out about it through your experience, but I mean,
Yes.
it's tough because you're just having a conversation with them. But I guess, like, how could you maybe get them to think about chiropractic, and why should they think about chiropractic, even if they're not planning to go become chiropractors? Because I think we need, with this conversation, we need to build material where we're able to introduce people to chiropractic who otherwise wouldn't have been introduced to it earlier on, like in high school or college. That's kind of an open-ended question, but if you could do your best to maybe wrap with me on, like, just what advice would you give to somebody in high school or college that could maybe point them in the direction of chiropractic? Like, know what you know now, how would you help contextualize it for them?
Right. So this is kind of like a two-part question, but so for the nursing students, most nursing students are there because they love people, they want to help people, and they have a heart for that. And so what I would say to them is, like, within any health situation, any health crisis that anybody is going through, something that's really important is the neurological system, right? And the optimization of nerve function. And so, regardless of whether they want to be a chiropractor or they just want chiropractic care, that's a way to do that. Like, going to a chiropractor improves neurological function, which therefore improves the way that your body is able to deal with any kind of disease or surgery or anything that you're going through, right? And if that little seed produces them to be inspired to be a chiropractor, then that's amazing. If not, then maybe they can improve their neurological function and help their patients do that as well. And that would be just as more of an outcome that you would want. And for people in high school or college, I think that our world, our society is kind of moving more towards a health-minded prevention consciousness than really what it was like 20 years ago. And so I think that's where I would start that conversation, right? Is like, within the chiropractic community, right, we're talking about optimization of nerve function, but we're also talking about, fitness, and we're talking about nutrition, and it's all super encompassing of like the chiropractic lifestyle. And I think that's something that I would ask them was like, what do you want to do for the rest of your life? Do you want to help people be well? Do you want to keep people well? Or are you going to do other things? Because right now people are just living their lives until they become sick. And then that's when the problem starts, right? Mm-hmm. But it really starts way before that. If you keep yourself healthy, if you do great things, then you're going to feel great. And a lot of times that potential, there's no cap to it, like you can still feel that no matter what it is that you're doing. There's always more to adapt to. And I think that's an inspiring thought, right? So to anybody that maybe doesn't know what they want to do, just like the inspiration of being able to help people feel their greatest and knowing that like all of that potential is within them and all you're doing is facilitating that. I mean, that's beautiful.
Mm-hmm. What kinds of stuff are you attracted to right now in chiropractic school? Can you kind of bring us into your life? What's your schedule like? Where are your interests at outside of the curriculum, as well as like what are you having like being forced to focus on within the curriculum?
Right. Yeah. So I'm sure you know this. Chiropractic student schedules are crazy. But I am so like on Mondays, I've got class at like 11, and then down till 5. And then Tuesdays are my really crazy day. I have class from 7 to 5, no breaks. And then Wednesdays is pretty much the same, like 11 to 5. So you're really in school all the time. And those are just for classes. But then you have like technique clubs. And those, you have during like the breaks of lunchtime and then like sometimes, after school. So like 7 to 9. I'm really, really a big proponent of chiropractic philosophy. I think that the philosophy of chiropractic is super, super important for someone to understand why they are going to be a chiropractor and what they're doing throughout the world, and with their participant that is receiving care from them. I am also trying to focus more on like finding a technique that speaks to me. And, I found a few, and I think that that's a really important thing to focus on as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then just like personally, physical fitness is really important to me, and mindfulness is super, super important to me. So I make sure to keep a mindfulness journal. I make sure to meditate because throughout the program, it's really, really rigorous. It's really intense. And so you have to make sure that you are okay and you're functioning at your greatest to be able to put yourself into the program the way that you want to,
Mm-hmm. Great advice. Great advice. Self-care. It really
Yes.
helps you. And also the reason behind my question of like where your interests at is because I feel like the more passionate and inspired you get, in your case right now, it's the philosophy. And I hope it stays that way because yeah, you're in the most science oriented part of the program, but yet you're staying also really connected to the philosophy of like why you're studying what you're studying. So I'm curious, like does your passion for studying the philosophy help you make more sense of why you're learning what you're learning in the science classes? And if so, like, can you maybe just touch on, for chiropractic students out there, what are some ways that maybe you personally have been able to make the program work for you as opposed to you working for the program in your own way?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think there's philosophy in everything, right? So chiropractic philosophy isn't like a singular thing, right? But like if you know why you're doing something, it makes you want to succeed in it so much more. So I think philosophy is important because I know why I'm doing this. I know, what it brings out in other people and how this is helping other people in the world. So all of the things that I maybe don't want to do or, I would complain about doing become less of an obstacle because I know why I'm doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, it kind of like turns on that curious mind, right? So like philosophy makes you think, and I love that. But it also like it kind of trains you to take these science courses and be like, okay, I'm not just learning this for like an exam. I'm learning this because I want to figure out like how the body works, and if I was in this situation, like how would I apply all of that knowledge to this and like help that patient become well and all of those things. So I think philosophy kind of fosters an inquisitive mind, which is what you need to apply all of these really intense science classes that you're taking to like realistic situations, and just like think about the possibilities of how you would use those things. And it becomes a lot easier to learn when you're putting them in situations like that.
Mm-hmm. I'll
Yeah.
just talk about like one thing that just came up for me when you were talking right there was when I was in school and I got kind of this fire within me for the philosophy and asking questions and also caring about, you know, the reality was is that my experience wasn't as great as I think it could have been. And I realized that in second quarter that I could have learned a lot before school, which would have made school more meaningful for me. So
Mhm.
as I was going through classes, like I had my notes, but then I had like a separate page where I would write down questions that I felt like students taking this class in the future could benefit from asking themselves, or ways that the material that day in that class connected to chiropractic in any way, right? Because I'm sure you've heard this multiple times. There's a parallel curriculum and then there's a central curriculum. And the
Mhm.
parallel curriculum was always fascinating to me of like, how could I contribute to that? Because there isn't a lot of people in second quarter that are asking the question already of like the student that's in first quarter right now is about to take this class next semester. How can I improve their experience, you know, with my awareness, my consciousness around, you know, what is important to me as a budding chiropractor, as somebody who's just getting started. Like you are already maybe a little further than some of these other students, and like how do you bring them up? And also, it's just a fun, creative exercise. Are you kind of following me with that one?
Yeah, I think so. um, so for me, it's like it's more of like a lead by example thing. I think most of the people in my quarter know who I am just because I like had those philosophical conversations with my philosophy professor, in class. But it's like whenever something's brought up, it's fun to like put that little note in there, and be like, oh, this is the chiropractic philosophy application to this. And honestly, I think a lot of it too is like the more people know that you're like thinking on that level, the more they'll want to come to you. So like sometimes people have questions and they're like, oh, but I don't want to go to the philosophy professor and like I don't really know who to talk about this. But like if you just like if you're like, hey, I love philosophy and this is what I'm doing, like more people will be attracted to you to ask you those questions and just have those conversations with you.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of it is like being making sure you're kind of in the right space with the right people. Surround yourself with people who will keep that fire going. It's really easy to like kind of get bogged down. And then that way, like when your fire stays lit, you can help other people come into their own. You know what I
Mhm.
mean?
Mhm.
Um, and I think that's really important. And staying connected with your professors as well, like those questions that you have that maybe, like a first quarter student, you want to be applied to the classroom and like the learning environment, like that just keeps like an open line of communication with your professors, right?
Mhm.
And when you develop a relationship with them, they're much more willing to implement some of the stuff that you say.
Mhm.
And they, like I said, they want you to succeed. So if you have feedback and you're the only person giving them feedback, then they're going to apply that to the class that's coming up and, make them have a better experience.
Mhm.
Yeah.
If we could keep digging back into like your life growing up, you know, looking back, what were some of the things that you did or that you were into that you see is supporting who you're becoming today? I'm just curious if there's certain activities you were into or certain interests that you had that you could see becoming more relevant and important today as a chiropractor.
Oh, that's a tough question. Um, you know, I think I think that I would say like mindfulness, like self reflection was always a big thing for me when I was like younger. Reading. It sounds crazy, but reading is super super important, right? Like your mindfulness books, science, anything that you can possibly get your hands on that you're passionate about. If you see something that you think is interesting, go for it, because like it's so easy to get like, oh, these are all my classes and this is what I need to focus on. But it's so important to expand your mind, expand your consciousness within the program, which is crazy because as a kid, I read a lot, and then I kind of got into my undergrad degree and like, like the last few years of high school, and I stopped reading. And then I came here, and before I moved here, I didn't start the program for a while. So I just started reading books again. And the change that I found like within my own consciousness and my ability to process information was honestly crazy. So I think that it's super, super important to make sure that you read. And even if it's like something that's not scientific or a self-help book, even, like all of those things are super, super important. When I was younger, I also loved yoga. And so like there are multiple different kinds of yoga, but it's a super, super great discipline for your body, for your mind, which is funny because I kind of like the reading thing. I totally dropped out of like doing that for a good 5 years of my life. And now that I'm here, I'm like, I need that time to like relax and like just quiet my mind and just like be still because I'm constantly going, And then when you asked me that question, I had this like random thought pop up in my mind, but I'm going to share it anyways. So I grew up in Panama. I lived there for 10 years before I moved to the United States. And the society is like a little bit different there, obviously. But like as a kid, it was normal to just like run outside and do whatever and like play in the dirt, and nobody cared about what you were doing and putting in your mouth. And but like now I think about it, I'm like, wait, I totally was like improving my immune system as I was doing that, and I didn't even know like the concepts that I was applying as like a 5-year-old. And now I'm here and I moved to the United States within that period, like I did not think that way at all. I was like super worried about everything that I was doing and like, my immune system and like following the medical guidelines of like what's clean and safe and all of that stuff. So, yeah.
The thing I take away from it is that you were in a different environment for the first 10 years of life, and then you had to come to a new environment and adapt and get familiar with a new surrounding environment. And then did you go away for college or did you stay local?
Yeah. So I moved like 30 minutes away from my hometown, I guess, for college. So I didn't go away. This was like my first big move outside of when I moved to the United States. So yeah, it was definitely a big change. It was terrifying. I'm not going to lie. I moved here and I was like, I don't know anybody. And I just like, I planned this like 4 months ago, but I think it's important to note that like when you have found your passion and your purpose, like everything will kind of fall into place. And that's really what I found here. Like I'm like a super social person. So I was really, really worried about moving here and not knowing anybody and not having any friends. And then I moved here and I was here for like 2 weeks. And I remember calling my mom and being like, I feel great. Like I haven't been lonely or anything, and it's because I know that I'm meant to be here and I know this is what I'm meant to do with my life. And I think like another thing that I want to say is like, it's really easy to get stuck in your head, but I strongly believe that everything that happens in life happens for a reason, regardless of whether that's to help you grow into the person that you're meant to be, or you're just on the right path, but like, I think that you have to trust that that is the truth, right? Trust that everything that you're doing is happening for a reason and just embrace the experience regardless of whether, in your perspective, it's good or bad, because something is going to come from it.
Mm-hmm. How are you thinking about the financial component of like the investment made and choosing to go to graduate school with this huge price tag? There's not really scholarships out there. So I'm just curious, because you seem to come from like this abundance mindset. What are you looking at the financial investment as?
Yeah, so I think that's a really, really important question because, it is a really big investment. But I do see it as an investment in myself. and as an investment in my future. I'm going to throw some chiropractic philosophy in here, but I'm sure you're like familiar with BJ Palmer's The Big Idea. And so he basically talks about how the small things that happen throughout our lives and what we do as chiropractors add up to a really, really big portion of like the way that we can change the world, essentially. And in grand scheme of things, you know, this is like a really big thing, but it's also going to help us change the world. So I do see it as an investment in myself. And I think that it's really important not to get bogged down with the financial bits. I strongly believe that there are people on the earth that are meant to be my patients, my participants as a chiropractor. And if I can change one person's life or help them see their own potential, then I'm happy, you know? And if you serve out of love, and if you're a chiropractor out of love, then all of that will come to you. That's what I believe. So.
Yeah, no, and I can speak from experience. I'm not a high volume practice by any means, but the investment that I made in that education seems so insignificant in the big scheme of things when I get to see how what I do every day influences my community, influences the people around me. I get to go out and see people that I'm familiar or I know. It just feels really amazing. And that's why we're doing this here, is because I feel, sounds like you feel, that this profession needs more attention, needs more awareness for the people out there that are looking for purpose, that are looking for something that is going to give them this passion that they're like, wow, my life is amazing, you know?
I definitely agree. And another thing is like, you are investing in your education, but it's so much more than that. And I'm sure that you agree with me, but when you're in this environment, it forces you to grow, you know, it forces you to become the person that you're wanting to be physically and mentally, socially. I mean, it's not just an investment into your education. I mean, you know, like you're investing in yourself, because the people that you surround yourself with will make you think about who you want to be. And it's so crazy that like within the last 6 months, I feel like I'm a brand new person, you know? And so that's really what it's about, I think.
And a lot of the times the growth comes through the struggle. Can you talk about some of the adversity you faced since you've been there?
Yeah. So I tend to like love thinking about the abstract concepts, you know, that are kind of like the change the world concepts. So sometimes it's hard for me to like, especially because the part of the program that I'm in is super science heavy. Sometimes it's hard for me to be like, Alex, you need to sit down and you need to study to make sure that you pass these classes. So that's really the biggest thing for me. And then honestly, just the decision to move here was a really hard thing for me to do, because I mean, most of my family was down in Florida. So I moved away from pretty much everybody that I knew, which was a really, really hard thing for me to do. But it's totally worth it if you see the worth in what you're doing and what it's going to, like who you're going to come out to be. And then with the school stuff, I would just say maintain perspective. You know, you have to go through all of these classes to get to where you want to be. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my head down and get in the books and do what I have to do to be where I want to be and who I want to be, you know? I think that's really the most important thing in any adversity that you go through. I think it's really important to just like kind of take a step back and be like, well, look, I may be freaking out right now, but how can I change my perspective of this situation to make it what I want to be and to come out of this situation a better person for it, or for your future patients down the road, or for your neighbor or your friends. You know, I think that's really what I've taken out of everything that I've experienced here, is just to maintain perspective and know that you have the opportunity to change your own perspective.
Hmm.
Yeah.
What kinds of, I guess, goals, desires, visions have blossomed as you've started to wrap your head around the impact that you can have in the world? Obviously, you're only 6 months in, so this will begin to crystallize more and more as you get into clinic and you start to experience the results and experience that, that dynamic of working with other people, serving other people. But um, where's your heart lie as far as like, how you see yourself going out into the world and making a difference?
Yeah. So when I first decided to come into this program, my heart was with, working with pediatrics and, pregnancy, more female family wellness oriented. I would still say that is my passion for now. I want to have a family practice. I do want a practice of my own. But I've developed this kind of like inkling that maybe I want to be a speaker, either in chiropractic philosophy, or just a speaker in how to remain strong in your philosophy and how that's going to blossom in your practice. Um, I am a very social person, so I guess it's not that surprising, but I feel like it's very different to like be a social person and then like stand up in front of a lot of people and speak. But it's something that I have just been called to do. And I think it's really important as well when you're first starting out, and I still have this problem, but it's hard for you to see your own potential and your own greatness. So I have mentors that are like, Alex, I can see you being a speaker. And sometimes I just have to accept that I'm not going to be able to see what they see in me. But I have to kind of like step into that without fear and allow myself to become the chiropractor and the person that I want to become,
Mm-hmm.
So definitely public speaking is something that I might want to dabble in that I did not think that I would when I first came in.
Mm-hmm.
And then another thing would be maybe opening multiple practices, and like franchising, which is also something that I never thought that I would want to do, but it's just exposure to chiropractic throughout the world and the country, which I think is really important.
Mm-hmm. Are you involved in the Pediatric Experience Club?
I'm not. I really, really want to be. My schedule has been crazy. Um, oh, you just reminded me of something. Um, the the politics within chiropractic, it can be a little crazy, but I think it's really important to be involved, with the state boards that you're in, right? Like the Georgia, Council of Chiropractic and like the Georgia State Association of Chiropractic and stuff like that, because there's a lot of things that are going on legislatively that you're not aware of as a student and maybe even as a doctor.
Mm-hmm.
And all of those things are really going to affect your practice. So you want to make sure that you're becoming involved as soon as possible and you're staying aware of everything that's going on, because in reality, like, the only people that are going to protect the chiropractic profession are people who understand why we need it, and that's chiropractors. So I think it's super, super important to stay involved legislatively, and you don't have to play a super active role, but just knowing what's going on and staying aware is really, really important, which I never thought that I would be saying when I first moved here, but now it's something that I'm very aware of.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Interesting answer to are you in the Pediatric Experience Club?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. um, um, no, but I really want to be, and I definitely want to expose myself. I'm so early in the program that it's like drinking from a fire hose, and you're like, there are all of these things that you want to experience, and you just kind of have to make sure that you get there and hold that intention. But I will become involved at some point. I know that.
So that's a perfect segue. What if you had a pre-Chiro program that you had spent 3-4 years studying the philosophy, the science, the art? You'd already gone through the pediatric experience curriculum in a very gentle way, just like you went through maybe some of these other arts, just to get the basics. And then you get to school, you're in your second quarter, your time is very limited. You have barely any time outside of preparing for your tests and getting through your classes, and you want to dedicate yourself to one or two specific things because you had the time to get to that place. How would that make your experience today different?
It would make it very different. Yeah, I mean, just even the thought of like having previous knowledge of all of this is incredible. Like that would be amazing. Yeah, I think it takes a lot of time and it's a little bit overwhelming. If I had had previous exposure to all of the things on campus or most of the things on campus, I feel like I would be so much clearer in what I wanted to do. I wouldn't have to stretch myself so thin to be like trying everything out for the first time. And if I really knew the basics of most of the techniques or experiences or analysis, it would be so much easier for me. Oh my gosh, the stress that I would not have going through this program would be overwhelmingly amazing. So that's a beautiful thought. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. How would you structure that?
Well, I like the pre-Chiro. Okay. So I think that it's really important to understand that chiropractic isn't just like one thing. There are multiple different techniques within chiropractic, and those different techniques are going to speak to people differently, and they're going to resonate with people differently. So I would probably start with like the basic chiropractic philosophy. Like I said, I think it's important to know why you're doing something before you even get deeper into it. And that's what philosophy is. And then from that, I would probably just like sprinkle in the different techniques and their own philosophy of the techniques and how you would apply it, in a practice setting. And then maybe you could add some science stuff in there just to expose them to some stuff that would be coming later on in the future, because the science in the program is very, very heavy. So if you had some maybe previous exposure to the way that the body functions together, it would be a little bit easier to apply once you were going through the program. So,
and just stop there or keep going?
Well, I think that it's going to be different depending on the person, I would say that there's a lot of literature that you could read that's outside of chiropractic, but still scientific. And so I think I would probably provide different things for like different people, right? Like it's like a serving platter, right? You'd have different options for people that are going to gravitate towards different things. So maybe some really science heavy literature for people that really want to understand the body and like know all of the kinesthetic functions and all of the biochemical interactions and stuff like that. And maybe some deeper philosophical literature like the green books, and if they really want to go through all of that stuff, and then so I personally started going to some seminars before I even got into the program. So just exposure to some of the organizations that are really important within chiropractic, right? Organizations that host seminars, organizations that talk about philosophy, organizations that are more legislatively backed, because I think that's also really important. So I would probably put in a component of just organizations to know of, because I didn't know of any of them. And then when I got here, I was like, whoa, there are so many and I don't know which one to look at first. So I think it's really important to align yourself with people that have your own vision, And just being educated is really the way to go there. So yeah, just education, resources before you came into the program, and then just kind of fanning that out to anything that, like the basis of the information, right? The philosophy and the techniques, but then anything that you want to go through or beyond the basic information, provide that out there so that people can educate themselves, because that's really important.
I want to thank you so much for just going deep with me there. I know it was kind of open-ended, and I also want to be conscious of your time. Is there anything else that you want to go into or go deeper into in this conversation just after having had this conversation, or do you want to just wrap it there? It's up to you.
I mean, I think this was a great conversation. I love talking about this stuff. So thank you for allowing me to, like just banter like this. I think that I'm just gonna like leave off with some important things. I would say number one is chiropractic is just like optimization of human function, right? And it works for everybody because we all have a nervous system. That's how our bodies work. And it really is a beautiful thing in practice. So even if you don't want to become a chiropractor, just educate yourself on it. It really is a beautiful thing. And then number two is keep still in your philosophy and know why you're doing what you're doing, and don't get bogged down by like the daily, oh my gosh, this is so much information and I don't know what to do with it. Everybody feels that way and it's okay. And then yeah, just more education, exposure, and then just like remain true to who you are and make sure that when you're going through the program, you're holding yourself to the same standard that you're going to be holding yourself out in practice. So as you're going through the program, it's really easy to kind of like let yourself go and maybe not do self-care and like not work out or keep yourself mindful. But that's super, super important because you have to practice what you preach. And when you're going through something that's really, really rigorous, you want to make sure that you're doing all the things that you have to do to make sure that you're performing at 100%. And that's going to be true inside of school or in practice, really in anything that you're doing. So I think that that's really important as well. And thank you so much for having this conversation with me. This has been amazing, a great start to my day.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, what if this happened for every single student? Why does it only need to happen for one student? I just think that there's just so much insight that could be shared in every student being from a different background, every student having different interests. Yeah, it's wild. And then, yeah, you're so early in the program, I'm sure it's been difficult to connect with students at other schools to see what their experience is like. And I mean, this is what you're doing 24/7. So it would be kind of interesting to you, like, okay, what's a second quarter student experience like over at Life West or maybe at Sherman? And like, how do my interests align with those people? And like, who can I become friends with who's at the same part of the program and interested in the same exact things that I'm interested in?
Yeah, I think I've actually never thought of that. Like, because I'm a second quarter and I'm so focused on like what it is that I'm supposed to be doing. But to imagine what someone else's experience would be, maybe on the other side of the country, it would be super interesting and maybe really important that we have that conversation. Yeah, I mean, we are kind of in a bubble. So I applaud you and I appreciate you for trying to expand that and, bring consciousness and awareness to, the experiences that we all go through individually, though they might be similar and maybe the same in some cases. Everybody experiences them differently and has different perspectives on them. So, wow.
Mm-hmm.